talked about this a lot over the past year, but it does need to be it needs to be repeated over and over again as we approach the release of Grand Theft Auto 6. Grand Theft Auto is not the biggest name in video games. Not even close. You know, Mario stomps it, Pokemon stomps it. There are probably dozens of Nintendo franchises that stomp it. Grand Theft Auto is a video game franchise that appeals to little children that want to live out their Clockwork and Orange fantasies of beating the shit out of innocent people who did nothing wrong. Okay? It's about, it is a mass shooting simulator. You know, it's how people like Randy Stair or the Columbine killers train to go into schools and shoot people up. You know, Grand Theft Auto is one of the most disgusting cultural phenomenons in recent memory. It is as bad or worse than Twilight, and really should be studied as a case example of just everything wrong with casual gamers. Because, you know, serious gamers understand that Grand Theft Auto is inherently shallow, that there's nothing to it, that this is like a very basic video game with nothing really going for it, but yet children are endlessly amused by destroying things. And it is something that we as a society should be condemning. It's something that we should be calling out and addressing as a genuine problem. Grand Theft Auto is one of the most childish, immature video game franchises in the industry, and it really should be called out for what it is, a murder simulator. It is downright disgusting that so many people prop up this series as the savior of video games. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is that the industry really believes that Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to come out and that it's somehow going to undermine the Switch 2. Like, Nintendo games are just going to stop selling when Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out forever, you know? Like, it's really interesting, you know, looking back at, like, you know, Grand Theft Auto 5 and how, like, that should have come out in Wii U, and how, like, you know, The Wonderful 101 came out the same weekend, and how that was a way bigger game, but, like, the entire industry downplayed that to hype up Grand Theft Auto 5 instead. And, you know, if Grand Theft Auto 5, you know, which was a game 13 years ago, that, if that couldn't destroy Nintendo with the Wii U, with The Wonderful 101, it's not going to destroy Nintendo and the Switch 2, especially now that we've had a full year for the Switch 2 to, like, get into people's homes and to build up a library. You know, Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be a minor success story. It's going to sell, like, I don't know, like 200 million units day one or something like that. That's not going to make it successful. And that's kind of the major takeaway we really have to understand about this game, is that Rockstar is living by a thread. You know, they cannot produce anything other than Grand Theft Auto. They cannot do anything other than what they've been doing since 2001. They cannot innovate. They cannot do anything fresh, original, or exciting. They are essentially going to keep putting out Grand Theft Auto games until people get bored of them and move on with their lives. You know, this very well may be the first Grand Theft Auto release where you have people who grew up with the games, like myself, you know, coming out and speaking out about how lame they are, how boring they are, how badly written they are, how floaty the controls are, how the driving sucks, how the open world's pale in comparison to games like Breath of the Wild or Xenoblade Chronicles X. You know, like how Grand Theft Auto is just a mid, like actually a below mid, like a straight up like, I don't know. What's like, okay, so there's peak, there's mid, and then there's like, what's lower than mid? Like slop, I guess? Yeah, so the complete slop of Grand Theft Auto 5, it does need to be understood more that Grand Theft Auto is just not going to be this major cultural phenomenon. You know, it is not going to reinvent the gaming industry. It is not going to justify $100 games. It is not going to save PlayStation and Xbox and PC from irrelevancy. And it certainly isn't going to destroy Nintendo. And I think most importantly, it is not going to be the highest grossing franchise ever produced or something. Because this is the thing that people don't understand about Grand Theft Auto, is that the narrative has been that, like, Grand Theft Auto is like the highest earning, like, video game franchise there is. You know, like when you look at the numbers, that's only because of GTA 5, and that's only because of the microtransactions. If you take that away from it, if you go to something like Grand Theft Auto 4, modded by Mario Kart Wii. When you look at Grand Theft Auto 5, modded by Minecraft, right? And when you take into account how long these games take to come out, how high the budgets are, you start to understand why Pokemon is such a bigger franchise than Grand Theft Auto. Because Pokemon releases a new game every generation, they sell tens of millions of units, and then they release a new generation, 3 years later, accompanied with merchandise, amiibo, spin-offs, the works, right? Animated series. Grand Theft Auto is not and never will be able to compete with that. Grand Theft Auto is completely reliant on incels just shelling out thousands of dollars to pay for shark cards to keep the lights on. We saw this with Red Dead 2, actually, where they put a lot of effort in the online play. They put a lot of effort into recreating GTA 5's online system in Red Dead 2, and it was nowhere near as popular because there was just no demand for that kind of accumulating wealth in a Western setting, because all anybody wants to do in Red Dead is a role play as a cowboy, right? In Grand Theft Auto, you're supposed to be having you're driving nice cars and having homes and stuff like that. With Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be a very interesting case study, because this is a game that's going to come out. It's going to sell a ton of units, but people are going to be underwhelmed by it. People are going to start asking questions. People are going to start saying that, I waited 13 years for this, You're going to see a lot of that going forward, and it's going to get harder and harder and harder and harder to downplay what Nintendo is doing. Especially as the Switch 2 continues to dominate and destroy everything Rockstar has going for them. If Rockstar were to kneel and were to put Grand Theft Auto 6 on Switch 2 day one, that by itself, I think, would put a huge dent in the whole narrative, that Grand Theft Auto is some major IP, because, if it comes out on Nintendo hardware, suddenly you're not going to have this, major, third-party console exclusive thing. Without that, anti-Nintendo sentiment, you're not going to be able to get any real momentum behind Grand Theft Auto, and you're not going to really get a lot of people hyping this up. It's going to be it's kind of like when Yakuza got ported over to Switch, right? Immediately, people stopped caring about it. Nier Automata, same thing. It gets ported to Switch, people stop caring about it. Because the only reason these games are worshipped the way they are is to serve as a vehicle for Nintendo hate. Essentially. And that's why, one of the reasons why you're seeing so much hype for Grand Theft Auto 6 right now is that the industry believes this is going to be some major weapon against Nintendo, and all the signs seem to indicate that's not going to happen. This is, as I've been saying for years now, kind of the last stand for the traditional third-party business model on Xbox, PlayStation, PC, is just throw all of their weight behind Xbox and PlayStation, spend a ton on marketing, and try to gaslight people into thinking these are the most technically advanced games in the industry, right? Grand Theft Auto is kind of the epitome of that approach. And the instant it collapses, the entire third-party industry will collapse with it. And that's the very interesting thing about this release, is that it's very possible this is going to be the game that brings down the whole house of cards, the whole narrative that Grand Theft Auto is some big, major peak video game franchise. It isn't, people believe this is too big to fail. It's not. It is absurd to me, how much people have tried propping up Grand Theft Auto over the years as being some critical video game franchise, when in actuality it's not even something that ordinary gamers talk about in their day-to-day lives. The people who play these games live in a ghetto. They live in filth. They are disgusting human beings who are so depraved and insane that they will simulate crime in their simulators. That's the general Grand Theft Auto audience. They are disgusting people that need to be treated like the degenerates and scum that they are. And, going into this, like, I do think we do need to address this more. Just how, like, Grand Theft Auto selling a lot doesn't really mean anything. James Cameron Avatar sells a lot, supposedly, and yet those movies are complete trash. Twilight sells a lot. Nobody respects Twilight. Like, this is a really good example as to how the gaming industry is just trying to bamboozle you into supporting absolute slop. That's my mindset on it at this point, is that I'm very, very tired of hearing about Grand Theft Auto 6. I can't wait until this thing fails. I can't wait until, Pokemon outperforms it once again. I can't wait to see, how much people cope and seethe about, Rockstar's Golden Goose finally getting butchered. This is the beginning of the end, okay? Once Grand Theft Auto 6 is out, once people are disappointed by it, there are no more cards to play. You have been completely and thoroughly wrecked by Nintendo, and it is high time that you acknowledge that.